Just the sun's coming in so strong, so I'm like hiding in the corner so I'm not in the glare. It's an odd time of day. It just
Well,
showed in.
today you might be hiding from the sun, but I know you're not hiding from life. We're going to have a great conversation today.
Coaching in Session, your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins here.
Welcome, Blake Lefkoe, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm amazing. Thank you. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for coming on. Today, we're going to be talking about your work, how you help people break free from their limitations. And if you know anything about the company, Reven is just never backwards. And I'm a huge believer in if you can get rid of limitations sooner, you can start to live life so much quicker. So I'm so excited to get into your work. But in your own words, can you tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you help?
Yeah. So I do a process that my father created when I was a child that literally removes your negative beliefs that cause your unwanted behavioral and emotional patterns. So procrastination, anxiety, fear, sabotage, toxic relationships, negative self-talk, like anything you want to be doing that you're not doing, anything you don't want to be doing that you are doing. Like there's all our patterns come from our beliefs. And when you take away the beliefs, the patterns just change. There's no tools, there's no tricks, you don't have to remember things, there's no integration. The patterns just change completely, organically, profoundly, and permanently.
Where would you say is the beginning or the inception of limits and these obstacles beginning to form in someone's lives?
So most of our beliefs are formed in childhood, 4, 5, 6 years old. Sometimes they can be formed later in life. There's a lot of beliefs about money or relationships or other things. Also, if there's a big trauma, something really scary or dangerous happens, people can form beliefs later in life. But typically it's through reoccurring events. So as a child, what do children ask constantly? What do they always want to know?
They want to know everything.
I don't know why. Why? And so we look at our surroundings and we try and make sense of them. But as children, we don't have the brain capacity to say, my mom is depressed and she can't give me what she needs because she's got nothing. She can't even take care of herself. We go, it's me. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I'm not important. And we're like a dad. Dad's whatever he is. He's being overly critical. Well, you got to be. How come it's not an A? Or you call that a clean room or whatever it is that they do, right? It's these little things over and over. And we go, oh, we don't say, "Oh, my dad's got really unreasonable expectations for a 5-year-old." They go, "Yeah, I'll just never be good enough."
Hmm.
And so we form these beliefs as children, and then they become our patterns, right? It's like it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so you see people very often that are abused as children, and they form beliefs like, "I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving, I'm not lovable." And then though and it's through no fault of their own, right? But these are the beliefs that they subconsciously have. This is the energy they're putting out. This is what they attract. And then they end up in more and more abusive relationships. So it's these patterns that play out because of the beliefs we have. And by eliminating these beliefs, we can change the patterns.
I had a couple of guests on a long time ago and just recently where they talked about the inner child. They talked about how that child, very similar to looking at the limitations of, their parents or their circumstances. And basically it personifies them, who they will be as an adult later on. So they say, as you said, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, etc. Would you say it is that inner child, or is it something different? Because I know in the world of coaching, we can say different things, we can have different terminologies, and it could mean very similar, but the way you present it, I think is different from person to person. What is your way to say if someone is dealing with that?
I don't know that the terminology really matters. It's really like the energy, right? So when I have a client, they come to me with a pattern, we look for the beliefs that cause that pattern. And when you find those beliefs, you eliminate them one at a time. So, for example, I'm not good enough. And I use that because it is the single most common belief that like people with every pattern across the board have. And So you go back to your childhood and where did this belief come from? So you are on some level dealing with your inner child or memories or whatever you want to call that, but you're going back and you're seeing them. What are they seeing? What are they hearing? What are they feeling? And this is really different. You don't have to relive trauma. You don't have to, there's no wallowing in feelings but you go back, what's the source? Okay, the source was my parents constantly criticized me, right? Like just constant criticism. Okay, so that's the source. Do you see that a child being criticized in this way by their parents could lead to the belief? Yeah, totally makes sense. And then you come up with alternative interpretations. What else could it mean that your parents criticized you? And there's no right answer. My parents had unreasonable expectations. My parents were parented that way. That's the only way they knew how to parent. My parents thought I was good enough. That's why they were pushing me. If I wasn't good enough, they would have just given up on me and left me alone. Maybe my parents thought I wasn't good enough, but they were wrong. My parents aren't God. They don't get to decide who's good enough and who's not. And you just come up with a whole, in that house, I wasn't good enough because nobody was good enough in that house, but it doesn't mean I wouldn't be anywhere else. And you realize that what you thought was the truth, it's just one possible interpretation. And so you are kind of dealing with that inner child or whatever you want to call it and going back and then there's a couple other steps and one of the other steps is going back and a lot of people are kinesthetic, right? They're like, I know this is true because I felt it. And because I felt it, that's how I know this belief is true. So you go back and you say, imagine you had this whatever, some person there that was able to give you these alternative interpretations. You find one that really resonates. And imagine being a kid and the same thing happens and dad's like, you got a B? What's wrong? Why did you get a B? Well, you cleaned your room, your bed's not made. That's not a clean room. And this time you go, I get it. My dad's got unreasonable expectations and lacks in parenting skills. He doesn't feel like he's good enough. So he's projecting that on me because everything I do, he feels like is going to say how good he is. So imagine being a kid, so whatever, if you want to use the terminology, imagine being that inner child and giving those events a different interpretation. And you do, and the feeling shifts. That feeling of I'm not good enough is gone. And there can be anger, compassion. A lot of people just feel relief, peace, whatever it is. And so you realize that just because you felt I'm not good enough, that doesn't prove the belief is true. Because if we change the meaning you gave the events, feeling changes. So the feeling came from the meaning you gave the events, not the events themselves. So there are a couple of steps where you do, go back and deal with that younger version of yourself. And that is really powerful.
Yeah. I for one, I just don't like the terminology inner child.
I don't use it,
Here,
but I don't.
well, exactly. It's basically the conversation I wanted to lead to because I don't think you use it. Just after speaking with you just for a brief moment, I think of because most of my clients are either teens or they're older, and I'm not going to say you're a child in my mind. I wouldn't want to be called a child, especially like when I'm trying to be an adult. And I understand we will look back at our childhood, but there are certain people who love the word inner child, and I always say coaching a session is a platform or a podcast where people can find a coach just for them. They can figure out the personality. And one of the reasons why people reach out to coaches because they say, you're exactly my cup of tea. And I already know I'm not everyone's cup of tea. People call me and I give them the hard truth. I don't sugarcoat nothing. And
Yeah.
they're like, dang, like I feel bad. I don't mean to make you feel bad, but if you are not showing up in your life, hey, I'm all about results. But it's not so much about the results that we need to A, we need to B. We just need to be taking action. And sometimes people are so passive in life. And I'm like, we can't be passive. We can't just wake up and go on our smartphones or wake up and hit the snooze button. That's just my personality, right? Because everyone is different, right? Some people they wake up and they stay in bed and they look at the ceiling and or maybe they get down on their knees and they pray. Maybe they do some appreciation, some journaling. Me, I'm like, step forward, let's go tackle the day, right? Full throttle. That's just me, right? I'm just a different
Yeah, it's each their own.
personality. And so I always tell people to find the person that's your personality because it's just easier to relate to say, hey, this person is doing something. I think what happens with limits sometimes is that they might feel as if, look at that person. I know this might happen, especially a lot in high school when peer acceptance is so big. It's like, whoa, there's such a good basketball player. I can't even make a free throw. And so now you're saying I'm not good at basketball because someone else is. And so the competition, or how we, I guess you can say, gauge our potential or our skill level, is based on how others are doing and not how we are doing. And so basically the question or the conversation I would like to kind of get into is, how can we start to focus on who we are rather than who the world wants us to be?
So I love that question because so much of what I do is first you got to get people out of pain, right? So like get you to a place where you're functioning, where you're functional, where you're not depleted with anxiety or depression or drinking or whatever that is, right? And once we get you here, it's like, who did you want to be before life told you what you should be, or who you should be and what you should do, right? Because shoulds are, they're not real. It's completely made up, right? So how do, and a really common pattern that I work on people with is people pleasing. And when you're constantly people pleasing to feel good enough, accepted, worthy, important, whatever it is, you don't even know what you want because you're so busy putting other people's needs first. So when you get to a place where now you're not doing that, now you get to say, what do I want? Right? How do I live my authentic life? And that's where like I just get so excited in sessions because it's so freeing. Like everyone's like, what's your niche? Who do you help? And I'm like, I help people that want to find freedom. And they're like, freedom from what? I'm like, whatever they want. Freedom from anxiety, freedom from limitations, freedom from pain, from whatever that is, to find freedom to live your life the way you feel like it should be lived. And the thing that's wild is our beliefs don't even just change our perspective of things, which they do, right? You get fired and you go, up, see, there's another example of I'm not good enough. There's another example of people don't like me. When you get rid of that belief and you don't get that job and you go, gosh, maybe I would have been miserable there. Maybe there's a better job right around the corner. Like maybe this is the universe doing me a favor. You're actually able to see it differently, right? And not only do you see it differently, but we're energy, right? That is what everything is. We are vibration. And when you do work on yourself, whatever kind of work that is, you eliminate a belief or you do a different kind of coaching or you sit with ayahuasca, right? You're changing your vibration. You're leaving those limitations, that negative stuff that's not serving you, you're leaving that behind and you're rising. Your vibration the frequency is changing. So when you eliminate beliefs, you're actually creating space for things to show up differently. You're attracting different things. I used to be an alcoholic and a bartender, and everybody I knew drank. And I was like, my son's friend's mom didn't drink. And I was like, what did she do? Like, who does she hang out with? Like I couldn't even process that. And when I got sober and left the restaurant industry, I have a whole amazing community that doesn't drink, or people drink a beer here and there, right? But I'm not surrounded by drunks anymore. They don't show up in my universe because I changed my vibration, right? And I've worked with clients on money things. Money doesn't come to me. You have to work really hard for money. Money is scarce. And as they eliminate those beliefs, all of a sudden money's coming from these different places. They get a check in the mail. Like it's crazy. Somebody listed their apartment and it went for more than they asked. Like you're creating space for things to show up differently. So it's not about what he has and what I don't. It's about changing my beliefs so that I can have what I want and I can be happy that he's a better basketball player than me. Like it doesn't mean anything about me that he can slam dunk all day long and I can't make a free throw, right? It doesn't.
Mhm.
And that's one of those things about jealousy, right? When jealous, they have this. Cool, let's work on yourself so you can be happy that they have that and you can find a way to go after it too. Does that answer your question?
Well, here in coaching in session, even though I ask questions, you don't have to answer it. Like literally, I can say, "What color is the sky?" and you could tell me how your day was, and I'm going to say thank you, and I'm
Yeah,
just going to keep on going with it because here I believe conversations. That,
yeah,
even though it's like an interview, like I'm interviewing you as a coach and about your work, but it's more of a opportunity for the world to get to know you, like to see who you were, see who you are today. And I think we look at people who have accomplished great things in their life. One of the stories I was thinking was, when you were speaking, was Dwayne The Rock Johnson. And he was one time talking about how he was going to be like in football, right? So he was going to do like a D1 league or something. I forget the league exactly, but like people are going to butcher me for this. But then his goal was to be in the NFL, right? Like he wanted to be this big time football player. Well, he didn't make it, right? And so he got into the WWE, and then eventually he's this big Hollywood star. When he was that young man, I'm sure he was like, man, like this was my life right here. Football was my life, and things didn't work out this way. And he can look back today. He can say, you know what? Sometimes things that don't come to you might not have been for you. And
Mhm.
even though sometimes we give an attention for something, maybe you want to be this really good doctor or something, or you want to be this big shot lawyer, and you find that maybe that's not what you want to do. And sometimes it's because the world is going to tell you what you need to do. You have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer, you have to be an accountant, right? There's a stigma, right? Because if I said, would you rather be a doctor or a garbage man? People say, well, garbage man makes no money, or they got to smell garbage all day, right? So they look at that, but then they don't look at maybe the benefits to being a garbage man, right? They don't really have to deal with a boss that's telling them to create all these presentations and things like that. So maybe they have it on easy street. And I know the actor, I'm using a lot of actors, but Denzel Washington, he was both a garbage man and a mailman. And he even said, I was both. And you might ask, which one would you rather be? And he said, I would rather be a garbage man, because he said I would get 8 hours of work done in 2 to 4 hours rather than being a mailman where I have to, pull out my 8 hours and make it last the whole day, because that is what the job was. So he figured out, okay, I'd rather do this job quicker and be free for the rest of the day rather than have to be stuck for 8 hours and think of all the 9 to 5ers. They're stuck in a job where they're just like, okay, 9 to 5, I'm in. I have to clock out at 5, because if I clock out at 4, I'm going to lose that hour of pay or something, right? Or I'm going to get reprimanded by HR. So there's sometimes locks that happen. And he found something in his mind was, even though this job is so unloving or unwanted, he says this job offered me more freedom. And I think one of the things people they want in life is a level of freedom, but it's reminiscent of the Maya Angelou poem, the cage bird. And most of the people, they sing for freedom, but if you open that door for them and you give them the opportunity, you say, this is the path, this is the process, these are the steps, most people will not even step through that door because they found safety and security in that cage, their comfort. How do you help people take flight?
So when people come to me, they're ready, because otherwise they don't make the call, right? They don't book on my website, I just offer a free consultation. It's the only thing you can do on my website. And if people aren't ready to walk through that door, they're never gonna book the consultation, right? And sometimes people give my number out, and I'm like, "That's fine," like, I'm approachable. I'm here for everybody. I have a sliding scale, like, want to help people, and it feels so good to do that, to help people step into their freedom. But nobody's gonna call me, nobody's gonna email me, nobody's gonna click on that link until they're ready. And when they're ready, I can help them, absolutely. You eliminate those beliefs that are keeping you stuck, you are no longer stuck. Right? If you eliminate the beliefs that are causing your anxiety, you don't have anxiety anymore. You eliminate the beliefs that are keeping you, stuck in fear of public speaking. If you get rid of those beliefs, you have no fear, right? So that's the freedom. Like whatever you want freedom from, we can do that. And it's not hard and it's not scary and it's not painful. But if someone's not ready, as any coach will know, there's really nothing you can do. You can't help someone that's not ready to be helped, which can be hard because you see people hurting themselves more and more and more, right? And until they kind of hit that rock bottom, until they get to a place where they're like, this isn't sustainable. I can't live like this anymore. They're not going to be ready. So, whatever that kind of moment is where they're like, I'm done being like this. But when they reach out, I know they are, which is amazing. And I mentioned this earlier, but procrastination is such a common thing that people struggle with. You're like, I want this thing. I want to go after this thing, right? The door's open. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to change career. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then you just don't. And so when we work on procrastination, that gives you so much freedom already, because if you have the belief mistakes and failures are bad, if I make a mistake, I'll be rejected. Nothing I do is good enough. I'm not capable. I don't have what it takes. You're never going to do that thing. When you get rid of those beliefs, you sit down to do that project, and all of a sudden there's nothing stopping you anymore because you've gotten rid of the limitations. And now you're able to step into your freedom, whatever that looks like for you.
I have a couple of questions because I think this is going to line up everything very nicely. One thing I do want to go full circle. You talked about how your father kind of developed a system or a process, or maybe just gave you lessons of wisdom when you were younger, or just in life. You don't have to tell us all the steps, but maybe the most important one he taught you.
So it's interesting. My dad created this process when I was young. My mom did the process and was like, this is why I was put on this earth. And they worked in the house running this business. My mom had private clients. My dad did session. I mean, this was what they did. And so I grew up in a house with two people just in the field of personal development, personal growth. And I rebelled from it like 100%. I was like, so not interested. I'm gonna go find drugs and alcohol and men, and you guys do this, and I'm just not into it. And I had a really fun life. I traveled a lot. I became a skydiver, and I moved to Hawaii, and I started surfing, but not working on your stuff, as you know, like, it catches up to you, right? And there's this hole that we have that we fill with things. But when you fill a hole with something, that energy only lasts for a couple minutes, right? So you're like, "Oh, I need another beer. I need another man. I need another this. I need another that," right? I gotta go jump out of a plane again, because those things don't last. They're not actually filling that hole. So I got to a place where this hedonism turned unsustainable, unfulfilling. I wake up and I'm a 30-something-year-old bartender, single mom, alcoholic, going, "Oh my God," leaving a relationship that was just ridiculous, that I had just tried to make last for so long. And then, what? What am I doing? Like, this is insane. And I had that moment where, like, I hit that rock bottom, and I don't even tell you all the steps, but I woke up one morning and I was like, no more. Like, my kid and I deserve way better. And I found my way back to the process. And I was so fortunate that I had this tool at my disposal. And I started working on myself. And I did a lot of this work. I did some other, sat with some plant medicine and tried some other things. But when I started working on myself, doing this process, I realized that, like, wow, they were really onto something. And I had to go through all those things that I went through to get here. Right. I couldn't have skipped any of that. I couldn't have done it differently. And it was amazing because I found the process by myself organically, and it worked. It wasn't like, oh, this is what my dad does, and I'm just going to do it. And the really unfortunate thing was, at this point, my dad had passed. And so he never got to see me, not with my son's father and sober and running my own business, doing this process that he created and living this fulfilling, meaningful life that I'm so passionate about because of this thing that he created, that it helped me. And now I'm able to use this to help other people. I manifested and created space for this amazing partner to show up for me and my son. Like, I created this community. I created space for these friends and these people and these clients. And I love my clients. Like, they leave because typically people come 5, 10, 15 sessions. They work on what they want to work on, and they're back on their way. It's not like therapy. You don't just come talk every week. And we stay in touch and we email, and I have friends that I still Zoom, so I have all this, and I owe so much to my dad and to this process. But it wasn't like I grew up really doing it much. He worked on a couple of things with me when I was a kid, but I really kind of just, my teenage years, just pushed back against it, which is hard because there's so many things I'd love to sit down and talk to him about now and create new things and what comes next. There's other processes. The main one is the one where you eliminate beliefs, but there's a stimulus emotion, right? So every time I get criticized, I get angry. Every time somebody yells, I feel fear. Every time I see a dog, I get scared, right? Anytime this thing happens, I get triggered and I have this feeling. And it's a really simple process that breaks that connection. Oh, and I would love to just talk to him and be like, how did you figure this out? Like, this is so profound and powerful. And so I kind of had to find it on my own, and it wasn't directly taught from him, which I can't regret things because I wouldn't be where I'm at now. And I love where I'm at, but that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
Yeah, I think of how we grow up and we can look back at just the past 3 generations or around there, where we had the baby boomers, we go all the way back as I guess 4, and how they parent is very different than how millennials parent, for example. Baby boomers were the people who, were, I'm going to go work, I'm going to go do this. And they would spend all this time, all this money. They would think of, their money or the things they provided for their children as love. And so they would take them to Disney World. They would buy them all these clothes and all these vacations. And, down the road, those high school kids, those college kids, one of the things that they said almost in sync was, I wish my parents just told me they loved me. And it wasn't about the time spent in Disney World and how much money, even though it might have felt good in the beginning, right? We're going to Disney World. It's going to be so much fun, the roller coaster. But then you get down later on in life and you're like, wait, what is the meaning, right? What truly matters, right? It's not the Disney World. It's not the vacation. This is not the clothes that I needed to fit in high school. So what was it? And so when they become parents, they say, I'm going to be the parent that I wish I had. Right. So now what's happening is many of these parents are loving their children, spending about 70+% more time with their children, and they're also stealing their self esteem. They're also doing and fighting their battles for their children. So now, fast forward to today, we have a workforce of children who don't want to work, who feel entitled, who feel privileged. And you have to ask yourself, if we're going down this path of trying to figure out our limitations from a young age, where would a parent step into? Because I know you have a kid yourself. Where would be for a parent to say, let me do the best job parenting I can to make sure my child not only feels love but is ready for the world?
Yeah. So it's funny. My mom did this for 35 years. She still sees clients, right? And because of that, parenting became her passion because she saw how the way parents treat their children leads to the beliefs that determine their lives, right? And so one of her main points in parenting is like, what is your child concluding when they're walking away from you, right? And at what cost? Yeah, I can get you to do the dishes right now the way I want, but at what cost? And not that you should or you shouldn't, but it's like, what is my child concluding when they walk away? And so that's been something that I've worked really hard with my son. And another amazing thing about this work is it directly affects your parenting. The more work I did on myself, the more I saw how I showed up for my son was so different, right? Because when we get triggered, a lot of people have the feeling or the belief I'm powerless. And so anytime that gets triggered, which your child not listening to you is a trigger of I'm powerless, right? You're not listening to me. I feel powerless. And what happens when we feel powerless? We get angry, right? Now we're yelling at our kids. Don't you disrespect me? Don't you talk back to me? And when you're able to get rid of these beliefs, right? And you switch your perspective and you go, isn't it amazing that I've raised a child that feels safe around me and feels secure enough in themselves to question me? You're not talking back. I'm raising a human who has his own ideas and thoughts. Do you still have to wash the dishes? Absolutely. Do you want to have a conversation about why and when and how? I'm here for it, right? You want to do this thing first for 5 minutes? You want to this? What? Oh, yeah, okay. Like we'll come to an agreement. But when things have to be our way, because otherwise we get triggered, and we feel disrespected. They don't love me. They don't care about me. I'm powerless. When we're reactive, we're not in control. Anytime you're reactive, nothing good is going to happen. Like, there's when you have a reactive, I want to say confrontation, but reactive anything with somebody, nothing positive is coming out of that. So when you get rid of these beliefs, you can show up differently, and now you can respond instead of reacting. Okay, he's saying this. What do I think about that? How do I want to react to that? How do I want to respond to that? Sorry, not react. How do I want to respond to that? And that, I think, with parenting is so important because we don't want our kids to feel pain. We don't want them to struggle. We don't want them to learn the hard lessons we learned. But that's what they have to do. So how can we support them and love them and help them to do that, right? I got a safety net. You're going to go learn this painful lesson, and I'm here to support you and love you every step of the way. I'm here to tell you that, like, great, you learned this. What did you learn? To doing, you made a mistake, you failed. Wow. What did you learn? What could you do differently next time? And so you can empower your children to work while loving and supporting them and giving them a safe, nurturing environment. I had a client whose mom told them and told the kids, you're Black, you have to work harder, and you have to do this, you have to do that. You have to be a lawyer. There's no other way people are going to take you seriously. You have to get into these kinds of schools. It's the only way you're going to have money. It's the only way you're going to have respect. And just beat that into them. This client comes to me and she's like, I'm a lawyer. I'm miserable. I hate being a lawyer. It's not what I want to do. So we worked on some beliefs. I can't do what I love and make money, right? All these things. Every session, she got a package of 5 sessions. Every session she comes back. How was your week? What did you notice? And one week she comes back and she's like, Blake, not only can I now see the possibility to do something else, I know what I want to do with my life. And every week she came back, I started a website. I did the photo shoot. I got my first client, right? And so as parents, we want to give our kids the best, but we don't always know the best way to go about doing that. So when you work on yourself, you give yourself the space to come from a loving place without telling your children how they should live.
Mm-hmm. I think sometimes when it comes to parenting, it's challenging for mom or dad to do something with their child versus a coach or a mentor or a guide or a teacher, someone else that they can say, okay, you're not mom, you're not dad. I don't mind listening to you because mom makes me wash dishes and
Totally.
so it's so obtuse where it's like hey, I want to help you too, but in their mind is like sometimes you get in my way. And it's not a bad thing because later on in life they're going to appreciate you and they're going to come over for holidays and they're going to love you. And it's just kind of like the cycle of how the brain develops. Like you kind of have to get a coach or someone to say, hey, I'm learning from you. That's why sports are really big for teenagers. They're in volleyball, soccer, basketball, lacrosse, cross country, whatever it be. We can go down the name of sports and they fall in love with it, right? It's like a passion of theirs. One of the reasons I think they love it so much is not only because of the sport, but because of the coach,
Mhm.
typically, right? A player that does not like the coach will not stay in that, on that team or in that sport. If they do love the sport, they will find a different school or a different coach until they say, okay, this is the coach that I'm going to learn from. I'm going to put my trust in. And it's the same thing with adults. You find a coach, you find a guide, you find a mentor, you find someone who's going to help you, right? Want to lift you up. And it's so important that you find those people in your life sooner rather than later. And as we begin to wrap up, like I would love to get some final words from you. And then, of course, to please tell the audience where they can find you and reach out to you.
Yeah. I guess final words is if you are ready to free yourself from your limitations, if you're ready to work, it doesn't have to be hard, it doesn't have to be painful, it doesn't have to be scary, it doesn't have to take a really long time. This work is profound, it's permanent, And I will love and support you every step of the way. Be your biggest fan and your biggest cheerleader and your biggest supporter. And reach out. If I'm not your cup of tea, like Michael said, everyone's got their person, right? We are energy, and sometimes we vibe with people and sometimes we don't. Yeah, come check it out. Like I said, I offer a free 15-30 minute consultation. Ask me anything, tell me what's going on. I can tell you how I can help. Tell me, about your doubts about the process or your questions or your concerns or anything at all. And yeah, I'm here for it. I make time for everybody.
Website, socials, you want to give those out?
Yeah, so the website is just my name. It's Blake Lefkoe, BLAKE, LEF as in Frank KOE.com. And yeah, BlakeLefkoe.com. Book a free consultation. I hate social media so much.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that social media nonsense. It's ridiculous. I have people who do my social media. I can't. Mentally, I'm not able to.
Yeah. So I have like an old Instagram from years ago, and I
Hmm.
keep meaning to turn it over and start posting. And I'm just like, oh, that energy's just not, it doesn't do it for me. So yeah, just find my website.
Easy enough. The link is going to be right down below, so don't worry about spelling. You just have to click away, and you're going to be able to sign up for that consultation, begin the conversation, and begin to get the mindset that is going to break free or help you break free from all the limits and the negative beliefs that you might have instilled in your life currently right now. And I always like to ask one more question at the end is I want to know a book that changed your life or a book that you recommend to a client.
Love fiction.
Hmm.
I've read some nonfiction books, but the books that like get me going are fiction. So do you is that appropriate, or do you want a
You
non?
can say whatever you want. This is not me, demanding. You need to say this, and if you
Okay.
don't say it, I'm gonna be upset
So
with you.
if you want a book that is not about personal growth,
Hmm.
there's two books. The author is Erin Morgenstein, and they are The Starless Sea and The Night Circus. And they are amazing. It's amazing, amazing.
What did the book teach you?
Oh, it just takes you on this magical journey. There's just the writing is
A journey.
incredible. The writing's incredible. The story is amazing. And it kind of makes you question like what's real and what's not, what could be.
Well, let's not keep people waiting to figure out what's real and what could be. Take action today. BlakeLefkoe.com. Reach out to her. Begin that journey. Find your meaning in life. You can ask why all day, but if you don't have action, you'll never get to the destination.